The meaning or significance of this face pendant seems ambiguous and undecipherable to us in the 21st century. It's commonly known as a mask, though this is most likely a misleading term as there's nothing about it that implies its role as such, at least not in a literal term, other than the fact that it's shaped like a face without a body connected to it. Another common interpretation is that it depicts Loki, mainly because the mouth could look like it has been sewn shut, as was Loki's in the mythology. I'm not convinced of this interpretation either, mainly because we don't see any trace of a tradition of depicting the gods, not even singular unambiguous examples. Yes, literary descriptions of idols exist, but to my knowledge, they are always presented within a strict sacred context, like temples and as objects of worship, and never used as mere profane accessories. Similarly, a person was never given the name of a god or goddess without a modifying suffix to the god's name, like for example Thorbjorn, Thorleif, and Thorkel. And contrasting the absence of explicit depictions of the gods is the fact that legendary heroes like Verlander and Sigurður, on the other hand, were extremely popular motifs across centuries. So, how can we interpret this face motif? Let's look at how motifs of detached male bearded heads were used in Nordic art through the ages and analyze what their imagery can tell us. If we turn our attention back to the shape of the mouth, we see no indication that the vertical striation across the lips represents strings sewn into the flesh. On the contrary, it is much more likely that these lines are meant to articulate teeth, gritting teeth, that is, like a snarling beast. Somewhat close predecessors of the face motif, like the faces on a sledge from the Oseberg grave, are often presented with visible teeth, as are many animal heads in pre-Viking and Viking Age art. And putting a visual emphasis on the mouth is far from unusual in Nordic art. We see it as far back as the Age from the migration period, where runes, animals, and utterances seem to flow in and out of the mouths of the humanoid figures depicted on them. The mouth was obviously understood as a highly potent organ, with magic capacity through the sounds it produces and its function as an entrance into and out of the body. Bodiless male bearded faces can also be traced back at least to the migration period, where we see them pop up inside the outline of animal hips. This is clearly a depiction of a shape-shifting being, a man taking the shape of an animal and thus taking on the beast's power. The face pendant also look eerily similar to the triangular boar-style gripping beast animal heads with protruding ears and large round eyes, sometimes even with mustaches. The depictions of human and animal bodies in the boar style seem more like a spectrum of beings rather than distinct categories of species. We also see the practice of shapeshifting on helmet plates, depicting berserker warriors with animal heads taking part in a ritual with a spear-bearing man wearing a headdress composed of two horns with animal head terminals, a figure directly connected to the cult of Odin and elite warriors. And in the context of the helmet plates, we find another significant and common motive, a man flanked by two beasts. On the surface, it's an ambiguous scene. He's clearly fighting the beasts, but they all seem surprisingly intimate, with the beasts licking or whispering into the man's ears. He appears to be wrangling magical knowledge or power out of the beasts. Surprisingly, we see very similar motifs on runestones 500 years later, but this time it's the detached male face motif that the two beasts flank. And these late Viking Age designs are also contemporary with the so-called palmet brooches, depicting male faces with two animal heads protruding from the top of the head, parallel to the helmet plate depictions of the Odin figures surrounded by berserker warriors. I would thus suggest that the face motif should be understood in the context of a long tradition of a motif complex comprised of shape-shifting berserker warriors. And I mean, a shape-shifting berserker warrior would not be the worst thing you could use as an apotropaic amulet to protect you and ward off evil or harm. There you have it. This is my thoughts on the significance of the face motif. What do you think? Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one.